Hey guys, Melvin here. Welcome to the attic. We're going to be reading a story from the RPGhorrorstories subreddit. This one was posted by user Madman Robbie. It's about a GM whose Shadowrun games aren't for the faint of heart, as one player who joins in with their only character finds out. Before we dive in, let me know what you think of my new look in the comments. I decided to switch things up a little. While you're there, it would mean a lot to me if you could please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know when I upload new videos. Without further ado, let's check it out. For a while, on one of the Shadowrun servers I GM'd on, I had a reputation as the high difficulty GM. This is Shadowrun 5e, and I never threw mountains of dice at my players, so I was a little confused by this at first, when in reality I just ran my game smarter, not harder. Armed goobers use small unit tactics, cops do actual investigation, security systems aren't made with obvious faults for exploitation, etc. However, as time went on, I drew a following of players who really enjoyed my harder games and appreciated the challenge. This went on for a while, and eventually I began designing runs that weren't just dice walls, but actually put the players in dangerous, complicated situations where they had to be skilled, clever, and a bit lucky to escape. This was until the hospital game. I had put up a posting for players on the server, an extraction from the Barrens, think Super Ghetto for the uninitiated. Some people on the server were interested, and applications for the game came in. A bunch of players by this point viewed surviving one of my Death March games as a badge of honor, since no one ever has, at least not while completing the mission. A few had abandoned the job to preserve themselves. So, while people were speculating, a roster of volunteers came up with their characters. About half were freshly made just for the game, expecting to die no doubt, and half were pretty experienced, 200 plus karma builds from what I recall. I told them again this was one of the runs I make very challenging, opposed to the dialed back runs I was doing more often, since I don't enjoy beating players into the dirt unless they're having fun too. The difference between a boxing match and assault, as the saying goes. And with that in mind, everyone was set to go. The mission target was an Aztechnology Delta technician who worked in the Aztlan-Amazonia War before he defected to the UCAS. There, he was in the custody of the CIA, witness protection, the whole 9 yards. Well, recently at the time, Seattle, the main setting, had become a free city from the UCAS. Thus, the CIA had no power there. As such, the CIA approached the team to extract their mark from a hospital in the Barrens. There, a group called the Anarchist Black Cross had restored the hospital and was running it as a free healthcare/education center for all the poor folks there. The scientist was working there in exchange for protection from the Anarchist Black Cross, and the plan was simple. Go there, say the correct phrase, and the scientist would go with them to the border into NAN territory, where a diplomatic escort was waiting. The runners arrived at the hospital, sealed up due to a series of gang attacks recently. Local thugs trying to plunder and hoard the medical supplies. The only way in was through a garage packed with dead vehicles, trip mines, armed drones, and sentry turrets. The runners roll pretty good sneak and avoid the sentries and mines. The Decker plugs into some of the security systems to flip them to their side. From there, they go up through the side stairs and find the hospital interior, a grungy, dark environment lit by moonbeams and portable lights, with power rerouted to operating areas. Eventually, the runners explored, found the doctors, the patients, and the schools they set up. The runners were suspicious of everyone and everything, however, were put at ease when they saw the hospital was literally airtight, fortified over the doors and windows to keep gangers and critters out. And the only way in was fortified so well, only hardcore Shadowrunners could get in. So, they find the doctor, say the phrase. He agrees to follow them. Then pink gas comes in through the vents. The scientist panics and goes for a gas mask. This signals the players to put on their gas masks. Through the window of his office, they see other people coughing and keeling over. While they expect them to die, they discover instead that the people are screaming, grabbing weapons and assaulting each other, even with their bare hands. Everyone from the doctors and teachers to the patients and students begins tearing into each other with reckless abandon and murderous psychotic determination. The runners begin rushing for the exit and have to fight through a mob of berserkers. Basically a hospital zombie horde, I realize in retrospect. The Decker thinks to scan the air and discovers a drug called K10 has been aerosolized and flooded into the ventilation system. K10 is a berserker drug that, for the most part, and especially in large doses like this, ensures a permanent berserker rage state that only ends when you die. This causes the players to panic as they realize it might get in through their skin. As they continue through the mob, they also find several men and women from the mob of patients have thrown off their heavy cloaks and hoods to reveal sophisticated BioWare muscle grafts, ortho-skin weave, bejeweled death masks, and heavy weaponry carried casually. One of them rolled and recognized these as Entantin, infiltrator Terminator types from the AS Technology Corporation, and they begin butchering everyone in the hunt for the Doctor. Since he had highly sensitive info from the AS Technology Corporation and was a company traitor. From there, the scene was a mix of the Belko experiment and the opening hospital scene from The Phantom Pain, with the runners turning to stealth since they knew there was no way in hell they could tow it with Entantin. This was where I began to notice a problem. One of the players who rolled up with a 200 plus karma character began to sound visibly shaken as they crept through the bloody, dark corridors of the hospital and hid under hospital beds as Entantin came through, killing everything with a pulse and putting a few bullets in anything that didn't, for good measure. When they were crawling slowly through a hallway of bodies, trying to move fast enough to stay within their oxygen supply while staying slow enough to be missed, I was describing the bodies of the sinless when the one player began to sound like they were murmuring or shuddering or something, and I quickly moseyed them along since I could tell they were getting much more disturbed than I had intended. A bit later, they were racing back down the stairwell with an Entantin behind them, who spotted them earlier. And the Entantin was firing at them as they fled. That same player who said they were fine when I asked them began making the same weird noises again, and I cut it back to, yeah, he hits you, or nah, he misses. When they reached the base of the garage, just this player and the scientist were left. The Entantin, or rage zombies, killed the others. He was nearing the exit and said, I sprint with the scientist towards the garage door as fast as possible. And he rolled his running skill to outrun the Entantin again. I asked him if he was sure he just wanted to barrel through, and even had him roll perception as well as surprise. Both failed, and the guy ran himself and the scientist into the traps that they had avoided before. The explosive damage killed the pair of them. Then, in the voice chat, I could hear the player start quietly crying before he muted himself. I tried talking to them afterwards to see what was wrong since they kept telling me they were fine while playing. And eventually I figured out through some of the other GMs that they were really young, like 14 to 15 or something, and it was their first and only Shadowrun character that got pulped by an IED in my game. They had played a lot of hard Shadowrun missions before and were expecting walls of dice and modern video game difficulty, and they apparently didn't know what black trenchcoat meant in the run description. At first, they tried asking if their character could come back, however the server had a strict policy on resurrections. Not happening. And even when I said I was okay with it, the character was dead and all deaths are final. The person did stay on the server and made a new character, but never joined any of my games again. And I remember was always criticized by other players for being too slow or too reserved while playing, basically afraid of getting killed and keeping in a support role in the back, dubbed Shaman Heals. Wherever you are, Shaman Heals, I hope you can enjoy Shadowrun still. This almost seems like an inverse RPG horror story, at least compared to what we're used to. Usually we're met with DMs that lack social graces, or plunge themselves into the depths of cringe, taking their players down with them. But in this GM's case, it's through their mastery of the game and a strong understanding of what they like that they're able to terrify players with these perilous scenarios. However, for the player featured in the story, that proves a little too much. I really enjoyed this story. It's refreshing to read about a different game and setting than the usual D&D fare. And the author does a great job of bringing us into that world. Hopefully this experience becomes a positive memory for that player of the potent, often perilous power that role-playing has. Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me here in the attic, and take care of yourselves out there. This is Melvin, in the attic, signing out.